right, welcome everyone. This is Board Orientation 101, sponsored and brought to you by Associate McKay Management. A brief overview. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first in a series of webinars that we want to produce and provide for our current customers, any future partners or board members. As you see, the intent that we're trying to reach here is just educating, informing current or future board members about the roles, responsibilities, and the mutual partnership between HOAs, whether that's single-family homes or condominiums or even business associations, with companies like Associate McKay, and specifically to explain the role of our community association managers, who are essentially the folks that carry the heavy load in partnering with all of our boards of directors. With that, I wanted to introduce my colleague, Jennifer Stoffrigen. She is our all-star. Scoot in here, Jennifer, so they can see you. I'm going to be the co-pilot here beside her, forwarding the slides, but Jennifer is one of our all-stars here at Associate McKay. So she's been in the industry for a while. She was in banking prior to joining this industry. So she has a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise. She's awesome at customer service, and her boards really love her. So she's a high example for the rest of our teammates to follow here. So she's our lead-off speaker for this series, and she'll be walking you through all of the content tonight. And again, we are recording, and we'll make this available after for anyone who might want to watch it again or share with other members who can't make it tonight. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. Just a quick overview of our content for tonight. So we'll be talking about your management company and how we work with you and alongside you, the role for your board of directors and you as a board member and what you should be looking for on a regular basis, vendor contracts and how that operates and works for the association and how we help facilitate that on your behalf. Community finances and insurance and how our financials work for you and how we help you focus and produce those on a regular basis. Our online platform, a website for your homeowners and your association called Town Square. And then also frequently, we'll go over some frequently asked questions and open up Q&A at the end for everybody. Okay, so our management company overview. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure everyone gets in that wants to get in. Go ahead.
Okay, so your management company duties. So we allow or provide a great resource and network of vendors and knowledge and advice and all of the things that you may not have access to on your own individual basis. So we open up an entire world of opportunities for you and for your association. Your community association manager helps advise the board on all of these topics. They come alongside you and your board of directors and your association to help enact the decisions that you as the board of directors make. And we have a partnership. So it should be a symbiotic relationship and us helping you make the association the best that it can be for your homeowners and you, because you live there as well. The value of that is that it brings you as volunteers, you can rest assured knowing that we have your back and we want to help keep your home and neighborhood in the best condition it can be. Essentially, the role and job of a homeowners association is to upkeep the property value for each association. And so that's what our goal is for you, is to make sure that that happens. Okay, so the role of the community manager. So we help advise and oversee the adherence for your governing documents. It is our job to know the nitty-gritty details of your governing documents for you and on your behalf, and help advise you to make the best decisions for your association according to those governing documents. We also can help you create and implement and advise on your policies and operations for the association. These include creating rules and regulations, rental agreements for your clubhouses and pool rentals. This will also include your ARC or your architectural review requests, anything like that that is in addition to your governing documents. We can help facilitate those. We'll oversee your financial management of the association. So this will be monthly financials, year-end financials, coordination of your taxes or audits, anything that has to do with your financials, delinquency. Those would be the types of things that we would help oversee for you. Manage the day-to-day operations. So this is coordinating homeowner communication. This is coordinating access devices, rentals for your amenities, such as your clubhouses. That would be the type of items. Work orders, if you're a condo association, we would help facilitate those day-to-day operations. Vendor and contract management. So coordinating with your regular vendors that you have, making sure that your contracts are kept up to date and relevant for your association, making sure that the scope of work is accurate and correct, making sure that the vendor has the proper documentation and paperwork, and keeping that all up to date and organized for you. Making sure that we are on site on a regular basis. So that could be monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, according to what your association needs, and making sure that the homeowners are complying in regards to the governing documents for compliance visits. For condo associations, this is regular site visits to make sure there's not anything preventative maintenance wise that needs to be taken care of or properly looked at. And then lastly, the coordination and organization of your association board meetings, making sure that we are present and attempting or addressing the meeting minutes, and informing homeowners if you have annual meetings, and getting all of that coordinated for you guys on a regular basis.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Jeff Ray with Blue Water Point. Are you willing to take questions along the way?
Sure, Jeff, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, can we go back to, well, there it is. Yeah, there we go. So you kind of talked about this from an overview perspective, and I recognize that we have different associations on the line here today. Is there a contract in place for each association in terms of, what we're contracting you guys to do on our behalf?
Yes.
Or that there is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have never seen that for Blue Water Point.
Okay.
We'll make sure you get it. Yeah, every community we have, I'm just trying to, a standard associate contract.
Is that something that would be on Town Square?
It'd be something that would be accessible for your current board members. So if you're currently a board member, it should be accessible to you in your board member folder on Town Square. If it's not, then we can coordinate with your community manager to make sure you get a copy of that.
Okay. And so that may be, just my ignorance in Town Square and not being able to find that. I didn't know it existed, so I'll go look for it. But I'll touch base with our community manager also if I can't find it, and try to get a copy of that, because, certainly I need to understand, and our board needs to understand what we have contracted for, so we're not overtaxing you beyond what we've contracted for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is also the responsibility of your manager to make sure that they're also communicating with you on what your contract states. So that way it's like I said before, a mutually beneficial relationship. You're getting what you're contracted to be receiving, and we're doing the work that we're contracted to be doing. So that way it's a give and take on both sides.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jennifer, is it a la carte, or is it one contract covers all of these things that you will be doing for the board?
So all of the items that I've listed here are all part of that contract. Anything
Wonderful.
that is part of the Exhibit A, which is a different above and beyond, those are a la carte items, but these right here are all standard as part of the included version of your contract.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So everything that I just went over for the management agreement and the jobs and descriptions for your community manager are all listed in your governing documents as items and responsibilities for your board of directors. So the management agreement is essentially you delegating those tasks and those responsibilities over to us to help facilitate that on your behalf as somebody who is affluent in the industry and knowing exactly how and what needs to occur for that to happen. So that's where that mutually beneficial relationship comes into play. So that way you can rest assured that your association is being taken care of in the way that it needs to be taken care of. The next up is our governing documents. So this comes to play in several different ways. First up is making sure that we're adhering to the federal, state, and local laws and ordinances. Essentially, they have final say. They're the law in regards to what can and can't be done in their city and location. So where your HOA is located will dictate what those look like for your association. And we coordinate with the local offices to make sure that we are adhering to those on a regular basis. Next up will be your plat map. So your plat map is going to tell you what the association's common area responsibility will be, and then what the individual homeowner is responsible for. So those will show lot lines, 911 addresses, and then the actual common area lines as well. Your covenant conditions and restrictions, or your CC&Rs, that is what the homeowner is responsible for on their individual lot. So essentially, when the developer put together the documents, they looked at the association as a whole and knew what would help maintain and keep those property values at the top of the price point for each home. And they listed those requirements and restrictions out accordingly to make sure that everybody continued to upkeep that presence in the neighborhood. As far as your articles of incorporation, you want to imagine your association as a business, because essentially it is. These are all registered as corporations with the federal and state governments. And so the articles of incorporation is just the creation of that business. Your bylaws are essentially then the how the business will operate. So it's the rules around what the board members can do, what they can't do, what financial decisions they can make for the association, how they can assess, how they can't assess, what they can do is follow up on the late assessments, and essentially how the business will be ran. Board resolutions, these are stemmed from the bylaws. So the bylaws will tell the board how and what changes they can or cannot make in regards to the governing documents. And this will tell them how to make that happen. So you'll be able to know what your voting quorum will be for your homeowners. Essentially, it would be majority vote, and how those votes need to be cast to make those changes to the bylaws or the covenants. Then your rules and regulations stem from your CC&Rs. So your rules and regulations get more granular on what you have for your restrictions. So if your restrictions state that you can't have less than 2 trees, then your rules and regulations can get more in depth on what type of trees you can or cannot have and where they have to be placed if the covenants allow for those rules and regulations. Any questions on the governing documents? Because those can get kind of tricky.
Yeah, this is Jeff again. So would it be possible for McKay to review our governing documents and provide us, any recommendations on changes? I'm not sure that we have all of these things.
You may or may not. Some associations don't have everything. You would essentially have, for sure, the articles of incorporation to create your association, and then your bylaws could also be in conjunction with your CC&Rs. It could be one document considered a declaration. And so it's possible that you have those. And then depending on what type of association you have, you may not have rules and regulations. Those are more typically towards condo associations. You may not have had any resolutions yet because your previous boards may have not made any changes or amendments to your current governing documents. So these are not the end all be all for every association. This is just an outline or a guideline of potential documents that your association would have.
Gotcha. Okay.
Jeff, I'll just say for Blue Water Point, we can review everything that we have and make sure that you have access or have seen what we do have. And then if there are changes you want to make, certainly we can advise on what we see from across our 100 or so organizations. We also have a council that we can easily refer to if there are specific questions, or if you want to do a wholesale rewrite or what have you, we can provide that assistance as well. But number one, we'll make sure you have everything that is on file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think everything is out there.
Yeah.
Kind of where I'm sitting, I'm new to this. I don't know what I don't know. And so I'm looking to you guys to help inform us. Do we have the governing documents that we really need to have?
Right.
Sure.
That's really where I'm headed with my question.
Okay.
Is do we have what we really need to have?
Understood. We can make sure that we take a look at that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So next up is your duty of care and duty of loyalty. So essentially, as board members, even though it's a volunteer position, you are volunteering to take ownership and also make sure that you're enacting in the best possible way for your association. So you, as a homeowner, and also representative for all the other homeowners in your association, need to make sure that you are acting in good faith in the best interest of all those decisions for everyone involved. And this means the upkeep of the property value for your association and making sure that everything is equal opportunity. So we're not writing a violation for one homeowner that has weeds in their yard, but not this other homeowner. We keep it the same across for everybody. Okay, so board roles. So your board of director, this is not the same for every association. Some associations will have up to 7 board members. Some will only have 2 board members, depending on your size and what your governing documents require. These are just the main top board positions and their responsibilities as a board member. So as board president, you would be the liaison between the board of directors and the management company, the board of directors and the homeowners, board of directors and vendors. And basically you are the final stop of the decision-making process. So you gather decisions, the votes, and then you project those decisions to who they apply to. Okay, so that also means that you are conducting the board meetings, you are addressing the concerns, you're the communication person, just like you would be the final decision maker for any business or entity. It's the same for the association as well. Now, you could also have a vice president in between president and treasurer, depending on your board and what your needs and for your association are. Vice president would essentially be the person, the next stop for that. So if the president is out or unable to continue their duties, then the vice president would step into that role. The vice president would also be in preparation and anticipate moving into that role the next year and as backup for the president. The treasurer is going to be responsible for all of the financials for the association. The treasurer is going to review the monthly financials with the community manager, make sure that the budget preparations are underway and completed correctly and in a timely manner, and also confer with the tax returns and any audits that are needed for the association. They will also have access to the strong room, which is our accounts payable system, to make sure that they have that access to the bills that are being paid, and then also be able to help coordinate with any delinquency and accounts receivable side as well. The secretary will be the document recorder, so making sure that everything is documented correctly and appropriately. So making sure that minutes are taken and recorded, provided to the homeowners, any contracts or bids that need to be signed, things like that would be reviewed and processed through the secretary. And then finally, you have any additional members outside of those main 3 would be directors at large. So the directors at large would then take on roles such as committee chairs or projects related, making sure that those projects are taken care of and addressed correctly, and then coordinating with any sub or homeowners that are on those committees and projects, and then reporting back to the association. Okay. As far as vendor contracts and coordination of these, Our office can coordinate and help you with the vendor contract side of things. This is making sure that you have all the proper documentation and that the contracts that you're signing and putting together with vendors are correct for the correct scope of work. They have the correct dates listed, the correct parties listed. The contractors have the correct expectations as far as what licenses they need. If you're a condo association, you're going to want to make sure that your elevator vendor is a licensed elevator vendor. You're going to want to make sure that your landscaper is a reputable landscaping business and has any permits or licenses that they need through the local entity. For the work that they're being done or that you're contracting them for, you want to make sure that the scope is put together according to what the work actually needs. So that way, you know, for your landscape contract, that they know the difference between prime turf and regular grass. They know the difference of growing season and not growing season, and when they need to come out and mow and when it just maybe needs to be weeds blown off, or not weeds, sorry, grass or leaves blown off. Making sure that you know what the payment schedule will be. As far as your contract services for landscaping, do you want to pay them only in growing season while they're out there? Or do you want to split the entire year contract into 12 equal payments and they come out during growing season, but they may not come out during off season? Making sure that for a financial standpoint that you know when those invoices will hit. Making sure you have a prime point of contact. So if you have a landscape committee chair, that landscape committee chair will be in communication with the landscapers, and then communicating and responding to the board on updates on what's going on with the landscaping. Making sure that you know what your termination clause is and when your contract will renew and on what rate or what timeline your contract will renew. And then making sure you have all the proper signatures on each contract or each quote. So making sure you have the correct board member signature and the signature of the vendor, because if both entities are not signing it, then it doesn't exist. It's not an executed contract.
So, I'm sorry, this is Jeff again. I'm sorry to dominate questions here.
That's okay.
Can we go back one slide? So, we're relatively small. Brian, you were out here. We're a relatively small community. I can only think of 2 contracts that we probably have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are being administered well.
Okay.
For general maintenance, we generally rely on Associa McKay to, come out and assess the situation, provide a estimate, and then we'll either approve it or disapprove it or take some other action. Is that an appropriate course of action from our board perspective?
Yes, yeah. So our job as your liaison or coming alongside the board is to gather those quotes for you on your behalf based off the scope of work that's needed, and then provide those quotes to you and the board for review. Essentially, your scope of work should be the same, and then the vendor should contract or should quote off of the same scope of work. So you would be comparing apples to apples for what you need to get done. So as your community manager, they would present the scope to each of the contractors that would be quoting it the same. And then the contractor would then provide a quote off of that one scope. So that way you don't have contractor A giving you $10,000, but contractor B giving you $5,000, and then they're quoting different, what they think is needed. Your manager should be the expert on what's needed and should provide that scope of work for them to quote.
Okay. Thank you so much. Very helpful.
Absolutely.
And I'll just maybe offer an example. I know for Blue Water Point, for example, the security cameras at the front gate, our colleague who manages the Associa On Call, they expressed they wanted to get new cameras. So she went out and got, I believe, 3 quotes at this point for the same scope of work for camera installation. We'll provide that to you, Jeff, and your board, and you can say, of these 3, this looks best. And then we would help facilitate all the back end, getting the vendor lined up to actually do the work, inspecting the work, making sure that they delivered what they were supposed to, and then making sure they get paid after the work is done.
Gotcha. Thank you, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Next. Okay, so next is the insurance portion of that. So Associa McKay requires vendors that work with us to have a minimum insurance requirement of $1 million, naming the association as an additional insured and Associa McKay as additionally insured. And this is to guarantee that if anything happens while that vendor is doing work on behalf of the association, that the association is covered and the management company is covered. So that way the board of directors doesn't have to worry about that vendor messing something up and then being left to pick up the pieces afterwards. The preferred insurance policy, aside from that, so the minimum that we require is that in addition to that, we prefer that these vendors also provide their own workers' compensation insurance for their employees as well. Okay, so finances. Okay, so there are two different accounts that each association should have. Every association is going to have an operating account, which is essentially your checking account. This is the account that you're going to have the most activity in. This is where your accounts receivable is going to go into. This is where your accounts payable is going to come out of. And this is where you're going to keep track of all of those for your financials. In addition to that, you could also have, and I say could also have your reserve account, which is essentially the savings account for your association. And the reason why I said could is because not all associations have that. We at Associa McKay highly recommend that you have that regardless of what size your association is, because every association does have common area and could have the responsibility of replacing or repairing an item in that common area. And you always want to make sure that you have enough funds to address that possibility. So your reserve funds is what's going to store those rainy day funds for any of those capital improvements and or capital replacements that you have for your common areas. This would be considered like a full gate replacement for your access devices. This would be a HVAC replacement for a condo association in the common area. This would be a roof replacement for a condo association or a pool resurfacing. Those types of things would need to come out of the reserve account and make sure that it is properly funded for that. So the way you make sure that your reserve account is properly funded is making sure that you have a regular reserve study. And that reserve study will be able to tell you, based off the life of your association and the life of those common areas, how much you should have saved up in your reserve account year over year to help anticipate the cost of repair and replacement for those common elements. Financial.
So if I can interject there again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we just started a reserve study.
Okay.
Brian, you're well aware of that. You were out here last week. How would you quantify a healthy reserve account?
So for your own personal savings account for your own self, you would want to have probably 3 to 6 months worth of payables saved up in your savings account. It's the same thing for your reserve account. So you want to have 3 to 6 months worth of payables for your association at minimum in your reserve account at any given time. And then based off of what the reserve study comes back and says the timeline or lifespan of those common elements would then give you an idea of what you need to work towards as far as funding for those elements.
Okay. I think right now we're pretty healthy. So I'm interested to see what our reserve study is going to show us, but absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yes. So next up is your financial reporting. So we handle your monthly and annual financial reporting to make sure that you're getting accurate financials. Your CAM will be sending, or your manager will be sending you the monthly financials for the prior month after it closes. So we're in February now, so you should be receiving your January financials to get review and make sure everything is good to go on that front. And then as far as year-end financials, come next January, you'll get your year-end financials for 2025 and making sure those are all set to go and ready for your taxes. That brings me to my next topic, which is taxes. So Associa McKay Management will facilitate your tax returns for you on the federal and state level. So we can compile all of your tax information that we need. We get all of your 1098s from your bank or investment accounts, as well as all of our financial reporting. And we submit that on to our tax third-party tax company called Sundin and Fish, and then they will compile your tax reports. The tax company does automatically file at the beginning of each year an extension for every association that we manage to October 31st to make sure that we have plenty of time to get the documentation and or questions answered in a timely manner to be able to have those taken care of before that deadline hits. We also facilitate the vendor information gathering. So we make sure that we have copies of W-9s and the certificate of insurance for every payable vendor that we have. So that way you don't have to worry about making sure that your vendors are legitimate and that everything is good to go on that front for payables. And then as a side note, we do also offer audit assistance. So we have a audit division or audit back office team that can provide audit services for you guys. Or if you have to do an audit from a third party, we also can help facilitate gathering any documentations that are needed for that auditing service. Okay, so property insurance or association insurance, the main one is your property. So making sure that the common areas for the association are covered for property insurance. And then also going into liability coverage, so making sure that the association has liability in case anything happens for an individual or entity on our common areas, and making sure that we are covered for any liability that the association may have. These two are usually combined together in a general liability policy. You also can have a umbrella coverage. So this is anything outside of what could be general liability. So essentially it's like a rider and additional coverage portion that is applicable or optional for each association. Directors and officers. Directors and officers is essentially your error and omissions coverage for you as an officer or a board member. So this covers you as an individual operating on behalf of the association. The fidelity bond and crime policy is making sure that the personal information for your homeowners and association is protected and taken care of, and making sure that if something were to happen and it does get stolen, that you are and your homeowners are protected. Now, we do plan on having the Board Orientation 102 webinar in March, and it will be covering more in depth on insurance, because you can go way in depth on insurance and cover an entire hour's worth just on this topic. And so we want to make sure that we spend the time needed on getting you the information for you on insurance. So please look out for the invitation for that, and make sure you put that on your calendars.
Hey, so I'm sorry, this is Jeff again. So, from my perspective, I could really use the help of our property manager to help us understand, do we have what we need or do we not? Because again, as you stated earlier, we're all, volunteers in this, and you are the professionals. And based on the needs of each association, can the property manager make recommendations of what we have versus what we should have? And we could really use that help.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have an entire division of insurance for Associa, and it's called AIAI, and we can take that to them. They can review all of your last 5-year loss runs for your current policy, and then review it and make sure that you have the correct coverage for what is needed for your association. And then they can also take it and quote it out to multiple different entities to make sure you have the best rate for that coverage that you need.
Okay, thank you. Again, it's we don't know what we don't know.
Right. Absolutely.
This is not our day job.
Yeah, and everyone listening, I promise I didn't pay Jeff to ask all these great questions, but I'll just have similar questions, Jeff. So thank you for that.
Well, you're laughing at me. So
No,
These
great.
really are good questions. Really, they are.
Yeah, I think others probably have the same, so it's good that you're bringing up. And I'll just,
Okay.
as a side note, if there are other topics that we've covered that you'd say, hey, that's to be a priority for our community, whether in the chat, which we'll get to in a moment, or feel free to chime in. Obviously, we're planning insurance in March, but if there's something you'd like to have in April, anyway, we look for your guidance on what you want to hear about sooner rather than later. We can cover whatever is most useful. So,
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, so next up is our online platform or portal called Town Square. So Town Square is a option for all of your homeowners. We highly recommend that your homeowners join Town Square. This is a great way to bridge that communication gap between the association board and management and your homeowners to make sure that everybody gets proper communication effectively and in a timely manner. So this is where we can post news and events for your association. This is where they can access their online account and make payments online. So that way they get them in a timely manner. They're not having to wait for snail mail to get it to the corporate office. They can also get access to all of the HOA governing documents, copies of the meeting minutes, copies of the homeowner financials. They can also put in requests to the management team or the board members for updates on anything specific. So if they have a request for a work order, or if they have a question about compliance violation, or they have something they want to ask about an event coming up, this is a great way to just bridge that gap of communication for your homeowners and board and management.
So I've got another question here. This is
Sure.
Jeff. So one of the things that we want to do within Blue Water Point is, a minimum of quarterly produce, some communication for our community coming from me as the president.
Okay.
Is that something that I or a board member could upload to Town
Absolutely.
Square?
You sure
Or
can. Or
okay,
you can send it to your manager or the assistant and we can post it on your behalf. But yes, as a board member, you have access to post on that news and events platform in Town Square and post a board president update and get that sent out to everybody. So we can walk you through that, no problem whatsoever. Or you're welcome to send it to your CAM and or the assistant and we can get it posted for you.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, some frequently asked questions that we typically have in our regards to the reserve study. So we touched on this a little bit before. Reserve study, the significance, do we need to have one and how often? You absolutely 100% need to have a reserve study. I will preach this until the end of time. This is my biggest pet peeve is please have a reserve study. Even if your association doesn't have any quote unquote common areas, you definitely still need to know how much you need to be funding in your reserve account. Your association does have at least a monument sign at the front entrance. It may or may not have the street lights. It may or may not have sidewalk responsibility or road responsibility. It may have gates. It may have pool, clubhouse, tennis courts, maybe a condo association where all of the homes are connected together and there's a lot of common space there. There's a lot of things that go into that reserve study that you may not really think about or realize is the association's responsibility until something happens and you have to pay to replace that or repair it. So we typically recommend that you get it done every 3 to 5 years. And we can help facilitate that for you guys. So we can help you figure out what reserve study company you want to use, because yes, there are several. And we can also then meet on site for the startup of that reserve study and make sure that we're pointing out the correct common elements and talking through whose responsibility is what with that reserve study technician. And then once we get the reports in, we can then review those reports with you and make sure that we have them accurately. And so that way we can make sure we're funding for that over the next few years. And these reserve studies will give you reports for 1 year out, 5 year out, 10 year out, up to 30 years out for these common area elements. So that way you can be prepping ahead of time and what they perceive the economy will look like and the price. That's why we tell you to get it updated every 3 to 5 years, because as we know, the economy can change drastically in just a year. And so they're going off of what they're anticipating right now. But in 3 to 5 years, that anticipation could adjust and change. And then do we handle maintenance work orders for the HOA and then, or do we source them out? So yes, we can handle maintenance work orders for your association. This is not just for condo associations. This is also for individual, single family homes, neighborhoods as well. We can handle maintenance work orders for the association itself or for individual homeowners. So we have an in-house maintenance department called Associate On Call, and we have a couple of technicians that work for our Associate On Call department, and they can coordinate literally anything that needs to be done. If the Associate On Call technicians in-house aren't able to do the work, then we can coordinate with you to source out to a specific vendor, and then handle that oversight for you, with knowledgeable technicians that we have that are trusted, that know what's going on and know how to communicate with the vendor correctly and what needs to happen. As Brian said earlier, they can help put together that scope of work for what needs to be done and then price it out to the vendors. And then on the back side of that, once a vendor selected, can make sure that all of that is overseen correctly and done in the right way. The vendor has their permits, they have their insurance, and that we are checking it on a regular basis. So yes, short answer, we do have maintenance that we can take care of everything that you need. Okay, what questions do you have? I think we're going to open up the chat and just kind of see what we have going on in here. So let's see. Okay. I would like to see a copy of the McKay contract. Fox Hollow. Okay, we can send that over to you. What happens when the duties roles are not met? Charging our account for repairs and another unrelated community repairs. Michelle, let's connect afterwards and let's see if we can make sure we get your question answered correctly for your association. I'm going to make sure that I have all the information that we need to get you the correct information. So if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, so that way we can make sure to reach out to you directly, that would be appreciated. To my knowledge, we don't have neighborhood members on the board. How do we begin the transition to that? Okay, so Gin House Landing is developer ran currently. So these would be members that would be joining the board after the developer turns over the responsibility of the association. So if it's developer ran currently, then your association would be under the management of the developer. So once they get all the houses built out, then they'll turn over the association to the homeowners, and then we would build a homeowner board. And we can go through an entire training on that as well,
That's
webinar.
probably a good April topic. I know we have a couple of,
Yeah,
and it looks like our colleague Misha is doing a great job answering the chat real time too. So
yes, thank you,
thank you,
Misha.
Misha. So maybe if they've already been answered by Misha, we'll scroll through them and the chat will be available in the recording as well. And then we want to make sure we open the floor for, live questions as well.
For Kilpatrick Landing homeowners, we can definitely make sure that your governing documents and plat map are uploaded into Town Square for your review as well.
Okay, whoops.
Great.
So are there live questions that we haven't already addressed or that you have that you'd like to ask, or just a discussion? We'd love to have any comments.
So hello. I have a question. It's somewhat convoluted, but if we have we're taking over a defunct association and there are, let's say, some existing homes, but never had an active HOA and they're duplexes and they don't have insurance, how
About
would
the homeowners don't have insurance?
there's no existing association,
Okay.
and so but they're townhomes or duplexes, right? Same in my mind. And they don't have insurance in place for the existing ones. And I know it's not March, so I know it's just an insurance question, but what would you suggest for the type of insurance for a duplex or a townhome? And how different is that from, say, just a single family insurance that maybe a regular homeowner would have?
So the insurance type will still be the same. You'll still want to make sure you have property and liability insurance,
Okay.
but what you're covering will be different. So for a single family association, you would be covering the common area as far as the clubhouse if there is one, or a front entrance gate if you have one. But for a condo association, which is what you're describing, would be a townhome or a duplex. That would be the building itself. So the entirety of the building would be the property/liability insurance. And that would be for the common elements. So that'd be from the walls of the unit out.
So
would be
studs
considered
out.
the common area. And then the homeowner would pick up the responsibility of insurance from the walls in, and covering anything that the association policy does not cover.
Okay, so if it is defunct and there's no existing association, could an active, let's say just board, that comes on with an, hopefully get enough votes for an association, for the existing homes, can you just require that they have the insurance to cover what we would require for the townhome duplex? So if there is an existing townhome, homeowner A and homeowner B have to have the same insurance coverage in case something burns down, then those insurance companies can talk. If we
Right,
can't-
so I'm not an insurance adjuster, so can't attest to this for sure, but I would think that your insurance for your unit in that double duplex would be for your portion of those, all of your side. So all the way up through the roof and all the way down through the basement or crawl space. So you'd be responsible for your half of that building, including interior and exterior. And then if something were to happen for the unit, then your insurance would take over for that entire section of your portion. And then if it needed to coordinate with the other person's insurance, then they would do that at that time.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Thanks. That's helpful. That's what I was thinking, but was hoping it wasn't the case. So
Sorry if that wasn't the answer you
no,
needed.
we'd like to have since it's defunct, we'd like to be able to say, hey, homeowners, come join our HOA. So we'll be able to have kind of this all-encompassing insurance that maybe might save you, some money. So
Now, if you get to that point and you are able to get a master insurance policy for the buildings as a whole, then that would change that. But currently, right now, if you don't have an active HOA and there are no assessments being paid, then it would be the individual homeowner's responsibility.
all right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else with a question?
Hi, so this is Dwayne. I learned of this meeting actually through Town Square. So this is the first one that I've attended. And I'm in Deerbrook in Lincoln, Alabama. So how do we find out who our board members are, if they have regular meetings, just that whole communication piece, who's representing us, all that stuff, right? I know it's a 101 question. But I'm curious about that.
So I believe that Deerbrook Crossing is currently developer ran, and so the developer would be essentially your board of directors currently. And so the developer would be responsible for scheduling any meetings if they feel the need to do so. They would also be in charge of any architectural request or final say on compliance. Also, the assessments being charged, that would be up to the developer. Once the developer builds out the neighborhood and then turns that over to the homeowners, then you would have a homeowner-led board, and then it would turn over to homeowners being responsible and having the meetings on regular basis, and all of the association, the governing documents would go into play.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. So they would also be responsible for the basic functions, right? And we talked about having what was it called? An emergency fund, if you will, right? 6 months worth of
Correct.
fees.
So the
So they're
association-
responsible for funding that, correct?
Yes,
Out of
so
our
the current
proceeds.
developer collects the assessment or bills the assessments, and then we put those into the operating or reserve account based off of the budget that the developer helps coordinate with the community manager.
But just one fine point, like just say the developer is responsible for funding it. That doesn't mean they're putting their own money in.
Right.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're gonna take the number of homes, divide how much we want in our reserve pool and add that to the assessment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I misspoke. I
Okay,
knew it
that's
would come
good.
from
That's
the
one quick, I know
homeowners.
it's come
Yeah,
up,
thank
you
you.
know, so I would say for sure, we're gonna do, we may even do the developer-led transition as our next month and then do insurance in April, because I know we've
We
got
have quite
quite
a
a
few
few.
questions, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of questions that come up about this whole process that I think would be very beneficial. So,
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate having this meeting.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the first one. And so we offered it up not just to current board members, but to all homeowners, because essentially all homeowners would potentially be future board members. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we made this available to any and everybody that is interested or wants to know more information about the association and kind of how our symbiotic relationship works between the management company and the board of directors.
Yeah, I think transparency is always the goal. So this is excellent. Thank you.
Plus, who
Absolutely.
doesn't want to talk about HOAs at 5 o'clock on a weekday night? So it's all good.
You guys
We've
know how
got,
to have fun.
Yeah, 9 more minutes before we'll sign off. So we've got 9 more minutes for any questions, and we're not actively monitoring the chat. We're trusting that Misha's on the chat. So if you got a live question, feel free to chime in.
I don't have a question. This is Jeff again,
Okay.
but I really appreciate this. This has been very informative.
Great.
You guys have done a great job, and I just want to thank you and
Appreciate it.
look forward to continuing to work with you in the future.
Well,
Awesome.
hopefully I didn't butcher it too much. I will say I've been dreading this all day. I'm super nervous. I'm not much of a public speaker. And so I hope it wasn't too bad. I hope it went well.
great. You did
I think you did a very professional and awesome job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
I'll ditto that.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments or requests for future?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, TJ Nance, I stay out in Jan House Landing. I know you're saying that we wouldn't get we wouldn't really like create an HOA board until the builders, I guess, give us back, like when they're done, building out here.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So when that happens, because I don't know if it's gonna be anytime soon, can we have a HOA thingy or another session just for Gin House Landing so we don't jack it up? Because I know we really
Absolutely.
want to do
Yeah.
a great job. That's one. And like if it's like later this year or next year, like at least we'll have like a refresher or some sort.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're recording this session now, and so that way we'll have it for backup, and that way we'll be able to provide this. And then you can also get with the community manager that has your association, and at that time, and they'll be able to help coordinate that with the new board specifically. So if the board members that become or get voted in at that time weren't able to attend this meeting, then we can definitely have a scheduled meeting at that time.
Yeah, not only this educational content, but I know we have some folks from Fox Hollow on that are literally in this process. They're turning over from a developer in the next 60 days or so. So we're literally in the planning process. We're having a call on Friday. So the other thing we'll have is I'll call it generally a playbook. So not only education, like, hey, here's the ins and outs of being on a board, but we're going to have a very detailed checklist and a playbook of like how to successfully transition from a developer-led board to a homeowner-led board. Like, what do you need to do 3 months out, 2 months out, 1 month out, roles, responsibilities. So you're not wondering what it's like I think Jeff said, a lot of folks don't know what they don't know. We want to help offer a tool that says, we're going to help you know what you don't know. And then we're literally going to walk with you hand in hand to make sure every T gets crossed, every I gets dotted. And even more importantly, that everyone understands kind of the dynamic, because I think it is it's an awkward handoff at times because of the way, at least in the past, developers sometimes communicate or don't with homeowners, or don't have meetings or what have you. So I think it's a lot about just setting a level set expectation about the whole process, and then helping you as the new board members be successful in standing it up, and helping educate your fellow homeowners. Hey, we don't get paid to do this. We're doing this for the good of our community. We need your cooperation. We need volunteers for committees. We need support versus just sort of, lobbing grenades over the fence about things they may be dissatisfied with, largely with the developer in the past. So that's a long answer to say we're going to have tools that will help all of that be very easy and efficient and effective, because that's what we get paid to do. So
You talked about creating specific content based on what we needed. And I wondered if this would be useful for anybody else, but also if you had this in the plan. We have 2 members that have been on our board for over a year. We have 3 new members. And our new members in particular are struggling with what their position entails as a role. You know, we have one position in particular that wants to cover everybody's piece, and it of course creates chaos. And also the concept that everything doesn't have to be voted on. If you're the treasurer, you can approve the bills. I pass that on as the president to them as a responsibility. You can approve the bills. They don't have to be discussed if, you know, it's
Yeah.
not a project that's taking extra money, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, do you have a thought on doing a more in-depth, here's your role and this is how, and then also part of us think it functions as a social function, the board, the other of us think it functions as a business. So
Yeah, I think to answer your question, we have, and we're working on updating real time, all of I'll call them job descriptions. Obviously they're association specific, but generally speaking, what's the roles and responsibilities of the president, secretary, treasurer, director at large, committee chair, et cetera. So giving you those almost as a template that you could say, yeah, that fits our association. The other thing we're going to be discussing with all of our communities that we may not have in the past is what we call a board of director code of conduct that would essentially outline, as a board member, here's the expected behaviors, if you will. You know, you can't have a conflict of interest. You can't make financial decisions beyond your scope, you know, for the community or the board. You can't talk over people. You can't, some stuff that honestly we've observed in meetings where it just needs to be put on paper. Like you can't yell at another board member, or you can't throw a chair. As goofy as that sounds. And then it also allows the board members themselves to have a document that says, hey, you as a board member have violated 3 of our 10, you know, agreed upon covenants as board members. We are now asking you to resign from the board. So it almost gives you an easy way, instead of having to vote someone off or it'd be awkward, that, hey, this is what we expected. You clearly aren't adhering to it. We'd like to ask you to resign. Anyway, so all that's coming in kind of in that same vein of a playbook to make things easy.
Right, and then in addition to that, we talked about a little bit earlier about whenever you create your association, it becomes a corporation. It is a business. It's registered with the state of Alabama and federal government as a business. And so you want to make sure that the board of directors is operating as a business. Now, when you go into work, you're not just all business 100% of the time. You can still cut up and talk and communicate and have a good time, but also making sure that when it comes down to it and making sure that things are getting done, that you are operating as a business and the business is being profitable for the association. And so that's essentially what we're trying to do, is to help you guys be profitable and get done what needs to be done for your business.
sure, thank you.
So I have a question.
Hey, so Brian, you said you guys are creating these kind of roles, responsibilities for board members.
Yes.
When do you think those will be available? Because, you know, when I stepped into this role for Blue Water Point, I assumed an entirely new board, and
Yeah.
nobody knew what our roles and responsibilities were. And so I asked everybody to go out and research, you know, what is the treasurer of an HOA do? And
Sure.
what does the president of an HOA do, and vice president? And so if we could get consistent with you guys and adopt as our management firm, adopt what you believe the RAA is for each of our positions, that would be even better.
Short answer is we'll have those next week. We discussed it at another board meeting this morning. So we have them. It's just a matter of updating them, and I'll say making them template friendly. So anyone on the call could say, yeah, this looks good or not, and make it work for your particular association.
Right. And Kelly, as far as your question, maybe we can pre-record some of these and go into more detail than what's just kind of written on the paper. So that way you can watch it and then submit questions afterwards based off of that as well.
Yes, Crystal Nolan is our community manager. She provided us a great binder,
Awesome.
but we're still working outside the descriptions.
Gotcha.
I think Mandy, hello, Mandy. I think you said, is there an opportunity for networking? I think that's another thing we're working on, is a way to connect board members to board members.
Of similar association types, yeah.
Yeah, for example, Mandy, I met some ladies that last Friday night that are Roush Coleman transitioners from like 2 years ago. So I think I mentioned this to you. So I want to connect you with them because they just walked the path you're about to go down.
Yeah,
So
that
we're
would be
open to
helpful.
suggestions on how you would like to connect. Certainly we can facilitate that virtually, or even host networking events here at our office, or
Right.
if you'd like, I like things like a Topgolf. So if that's of interest, we can certainly facilitate that. I think in person is always better than staring at this little square, but we're putting thought on how to make that happen, even virtually, maybe even within the town square ecosystem, how to allow you to connect with one another if you choose to do so.
Great. Yeah, it would be really helpful to connect with other similar boards. So we're not a condominium association. So like that aside, it would be helpful, especially if they are currently developer-led, Roush Coleman specifically, or maybe other developers. It's
Sure.
just helpful to speak to others.
We're 2 minutes over, so I want to be mindful of that. So unless there's a final question or comment, we'll conclude for today. Again, we will be sort of editing this, making sure we take out the ums and ahs and whatever, and publishing the chat. So we will look for a link. Probably we might post it on YouTube or Vimeo, somewhere like that, where the link will be easy to just click on and watch. We'll probably email that to all of you that are board directors, to that email list, and then we'll post it on all Town Square for every association. Hey, here's our first video thing. Click on the link to watch, and we'll do that for all the ones moving forward as well. So,
Great. So final comment. Thank you guys. Great job.
oh, we're welcome. Our pleasure to do it.
Thank you, everyone that is in
Thank you so much.
attendance. This is a great turnout for the first one, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us and to talk with us about these things.